Okay, it's been a few days since I've last done a video. I was plotting my course, I guess you could say, charting my course about what I wanted to do next with these. Where we finished 2 Samuel and 1 Chronicles, the account of David in 1 Chronicles last time. So today we're going to be moving on to the time of Solomon, the son of David. And we're going to be reading about Solomon, King Solomon. Hang on a second here. We're not going to get all the way through Solomon's account in either 1 Kings or 2 Chronicles today. Solomon features in about the first half of the book of 1 Kings and the first quarter or so of the book of 2 Chronicles. Doesn't get as much attention as David does, who features in half the book of 1 Samuel, all of 2 Samuel, and even into 1 Kings. Solomon does, however, have 3 books in the Bible that are associated with him that he wrote: Proverbs, Song of Solomon, and Ecclesiastes. So as we go through the era of Solomon, we will also be taking these side detours into reading those books as well. So we're going to be here in the time of Solomon. Solomon reigned in the 900s BC. David was king right around 1000 BC. And he died and left his son Solomon in charge. And so now we're talking here about the 900s BC, basically. That's the time frame of the era of Solomon. His dates are usually given as about 970 to 930 BC. Remember, with BC, we're moving downwards. We're moving from larger numbers to smaller numbers as we go from, the past to the year of Christ and then into the AD era. Anyway, but we're not totally done with David yet. We have a little bit more about David in his final days here at the beginning of 1 Kings. 1 Kings, chapter 1. When King David was old and well advanced in years, he could not keep warm even when they put covers over him. It's a common problem with old people. Now, David isn't really all that old here. Okay, he's going to reign for 40 years. We read that he became king at 30. So assuming that the 40 years is an actual number and not like a rounded off estimate, which it might be, who knows. He dies around age 70. If he was 30 when he became king, he reigned about 40 years. He dies at age 70. So if this is his final days, he's in his late 60s here, which really isn't that old. But he's had a hard life. He was a warrior, he was a fugitive, he was an outlaw, he was on the run for a good chunk of his youth. Fought many battles. He was on the run again as an older man, went from his son Absalom for a period of time. He's fought many battles. He's had a lot of stress. You read in the Psalms that are associated with David, that he had a lot of stress. We have not read the Psalms. We'll be reading those at the end of our time in the Old Testament. But David had a lot of stress, a lot of worries, a lot of concerns, endured a lot of hardship. So my guess is that at age 69, he's more worn out than we would think of 69-year-olds today. And of course, this was also ancient history. They may have worn out more quickly, but he's not. I mean, by our way of thinking of it, in his late 60s, he's not that old. But he's had a hard life, and so he has reached a point where he can no longer keep himself warm. I know old people who've had that problem. My dad had that issue. Of course, he was in his mid-70s when he died. So it is harder for older people to keep their body heat up. So a servant said to him, "Let us look for a young virgin to attend the king and take care of him. She can lie beside him so that our Lord may keep warm." She's going to be transferring her body heat to him, in other words. Then they searched throughout Israel for a beautiful girl. And they found Abishag, a Shunammite, and brought her to the king. The girl was very beautiful. She's a virgin, so she's probably a teenager, let's say about 15-ish. And she took care of the king and waited on him. But the king had no intimate relations with her. So she was not his wife, was not his concubine, did not get married to him in any legal sense at all. And he did not have sex with her. Maybe he couldn't have sex with her. Maybe there is kind of hidden in this statement of acknowledgement that he might have been impotent in his final days. I don't know. It doesn't actually say that, but that is a possibility. Now, of course, in their culture, if he's gone impotent, then he's pretty much useless. Okay? Like, that would be a very humiliating thing for this viral living king who was such a force of life and personality in his youth and throughout his life. Who loved the ladies. We've read about this before. From the very first time we saw him, we talked about how good looking and handsome he was. And from very early in his life, the ladies swooned over him. Michal, daughter of Saul, swooned over him when she was young. The women of Israel sang songs about him. I mean, he had a charm. He was very popular with the women of Israel. So if he's not impotent, that's deeply humiliating and shameful. Doesn't say that he is. Doesn't say that. But at the very least, he did not have sex with this girl, and she did not become his wife or his concubine. She is not legally attached to him. Excuse me. Now, excuse me, wow. Now, Adonijah, whose mother was Hagar. Now, Adonijah is the son of David. I went back too far. That happens sometimes. I have a cat in the bedroom. You can probably hear her on the microphone. She's very loud and very annoying. She's going to stay back there right now, though. If she came out here, she'd be even more annoying. She wouldn't be probably as loud, but she would be more annoying. Okay, sons were born. 2 Samuel 3, starting in verse 2. Sons were born to David in Hebron. His firstborn was Amnon. We read about him. He raped Tamar and was killed by Absalom. His second was Chileab, the son of Abigail. Now that child apparently died as an infant or in young childhood, because we never read about him again. The third, and we would probably read about him if he factored into the events that happened later in David's life. So most likely he died early. The third, Absalom, and we read about him. He had the rebellion and was put down and killed. The fourth, Adonijah, son of Haggith. So Adonijah is David's oldest remaining son. And therefore, by human standards, he is logically the next in line to be king. Now Adonijah, whose mother was Haggith, put himself forward and said, I will be king. He is taking the initiative here. He's not saying I am king, but he's saying I will be king. So he got chariots and horses ready, with 50 men to run ahead of him. This is basically the same thing Absalom did as part of his rebellion. Let's take a look here. Absalom, chapter 2 Samuel 15:1. In the course of time, Absalom provided himself with a chariot and horses, and with 50 men to run ahead of him. So Adonijah is kind of doing the same thing here. His father had never interfered with him by asking, why do you behave as you do? He was also very handsome, as his father was, and as Absalom was. This is a good-looking family. Okay, we read it from the very beginning. One of the first things we read about David was that he was very good-looking. He was very popular with the women. He probably got the most beautiful women for himself. And when you compare the most handsome man with you match up the most handsome man with the most beautiful woman, you have beautiful kids. So we read about his daughter Tamar being so lovely that her own half-brother, Tamar, the beautiful sister of Absalom, and her own half-brother Amnon couldn't help himself from wanting to have sex with her. This is a good-looking crew of people. He was very handsome and was born next after Absalom. So he's the guy that the people are going to get behind. If he can rally public support, the people are going to get behind him. Adonijah conferred with Joab, the son of Zeruiah, and with Abiathar the priest, and they gave him their support. But Zadok the priest, Benaiah son of Jehoiada, Nathan the prophet, Shimei and Ray, and David's special guard did not join Adonijah. So he has some supporters, but most of the inner circle are not joining him. Adonijah then sacrificed sheep, cattle, and fattened calves at the stone of Zoheleth near En Rogel. He invited all his brothers, the king's sons, and all the men of Judah who were royal officials. But he did not invite Nathan the prophet, or Benaiah, or the special guard, or his brother Solomon. Now, at some point, David had made it clear, privately at least, that he wanted Solomon to be his successor. We read about this, we kind of hear this referred to in 1 Chronicles. 1 Chronicles 22. Let's say, starting in verse 5, David said, and we don't really have a timeline for this. I talked about this when we read the end of 1 Chronicles. It's hard to tell exactly where some of these preparation temple fit into the timeline of David's life. They'd be in the back half of his life, but it's hard to say exactly where or when. But anyway, in 1 Chronicles 22, verse 5, David said, I'm not sure if he's talking to himself or to someone else or what, but he's saying this. My son Solomon is young and inexperienced, and the house to be built for the Lord should be of great magnificence and fame and splendor in the sight of all the nations. Therefore I will make preparations for it. So David made extensive preparations before his death. Then he called for his son Solomon and charged him to build a house for the Lord, the God of Israel. He said to Solomon, My son, I had it in my heart to build a house in the name of the Lord my God. But this word of the Lord came to me. You have shed much blood and have fought many wars. You are not to build a house for my name, because you have shed much blood on the earth in my sight. Not all that blood was legitimate blood, by the way. He's fought many wars, but he has also shed blood outside of wars. Some of that blood was illegitimate. He has a blood guilt. But you will have a son who will be a man of peace and rest. And I will give him rest from all his enemies on every side. His name will be Solomon. And I will grant Israel peace and quiet during his reign. He is the one who will build a house for my name. He will be my son, and I will be his father. And I will establish his throne, the throne of his kingdom over Israel forever. So and David goes on to talk more about the Solomon there. I don't know exactly how public this pronouncement of Solomon as David's successor was. We do read in verse 17, David ordered all the leaders of Israel to help his son Solomon. So I'm not sure. And I don't know where that factors into the timeline and how that relates to this event. This is near the very end of David's life. So that we just read in 1 Chronicles probably would have occurred before this. But at any rate, David has made, as Nathan and Bathsheba will both talk about here in a bit, David has made his intentions known that he wants Solomon to be his successor. Apparently he got that straight from God. But either that was a pretty private pronouncement that wasn't made public at the time, or it's been a while and that may have, it may have been fading somewhat. Maybe people had, weren't, I don't know exactly. At any rate, there was an awareness of this, but it doesn't seem to have been accepted or maybe even been made aware of. The entire population doesn't seem to have either accepted it or maybe even been made aware of it. Anyway, so Adonijah is laying the groundwork for himself to become king. He's not really plotting a coup here, but he's saying that I'm going to be king. He isn't saying I am king, but he's saying I am going to be king. I will be king. Then Nathan asked Bathsheba, Solomon's mother, have you not heard that Adonijah, the son of Haggith, has become king without our Lord David's knowing it? Now this is a bit of a leap here because he hasn't actually declared himself king. Now then, let me advise you how you can save your own life and the life of your son Solomon, because if Adonijah is declared king, Solomon and Bathsheba are going to be threats to him, so they're going to be removed. Go into King David and say to him, my lord the king, Did you not swear to me, your servant, surely Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne? Why then has Adonijah become king? While you are still there talking to, now this is Nathan talking to Bathsheba again. While you, Bathsheba, are still there talking to the king, David, I, Nathan, will come in and confirm what you have said. So Nathan has a plan. I'm not sure if he's getting this plan straight from God. He's a prophet. I'm not sure if he's getting this plan straight from God or if this is his own idea to do this. I don't know. But he has a plan. He sees a problem, and he has a plan to deal with the problem. So Bathsheba went to see the aged king in his room, where Abishag the Shunammite was attending him. Bathsheba bowed low and knelt before the king. What is it you want? The king asked. She said to him, My lord, excuse me, you yourself swore to me, your servant, by the Lord your God, Solomon your son shall be king after me, and he will sit on my throne. But now Adonijah has become king. Again, that's kind of overstating what's actually happening here, but they need to impress upon the king how serious the situation is. And you, my lord the king, do not know about it. He has sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves, and sheep, and has invited all the king's sons, Abiathar the priest, and Joab the commander of the army, but he has not invited Solomon your servant. So apparently he invited all the other brothers, all the other princes. It didn't invite Solomon, so I'm guessing Adonijah was aware of the reputation Solomon had as being the next king. I'm guessing they all were. Apparently there was some acknowledgement of it, but how public or how well accepted that was, I'm not clear. He has not invited Solomon your servant, meaning Solomon is on the out looking in. My lord the king, the eyes of all Israel are on you, to learn from you who will sit on the throne of my lord the king after him. Otherwise, as soon as my lord the king is laid to rest with his fathers, I and my son Solomon will be treated as criminals. They're going to be on the wrong side of the transfer of power. That's a dangerous place to be in ancient times. While she was still speaking with the king, Nathan the prophet arrived. So he said he was going to do this. So he's timed his arrival to coincide with the end of her speech to David so he can reinforce what Bathsheba just said. And they told the king, the attendants, the people around him, I guess, Nathan the prophet is here. So he went before the king and with his face to the ground. Now apparently Bathsheba leaves at this point in time. The text doesn't actually say that, but she's going to come back in a moment, which means she has to step out at some time. That's just one of those things you have to accept about the ancient way that they wrote. They didn't include every detail. Nowadays we do. Nowadays in our books, we don't really have space limitations or worrying about, page, we can print as many pages as we want or have as many columns or words as we want, but back then they had to be a lot more meticulous and careful with how much information they record in their limited number of scrolls and their limited ability to actually produce information. So they did not record every detail, and we just have to accept that and try to infer where we can, what we can, where we can about what must be happening. At some point after Nathan comes in, Bathsheba clearly has to leave because she comes back in a moment. But the text doesn't actually say that. It just assumes that you are going to assume that. Nathan said, Have you, my lord the king, declared that Adonijah shall be king after you, and that he will sit on your throne? Today he has gone down and sacrificed great numbers of cattle, fattened calves, and sheep. He has invited all the king's sons, the commanders of the army, and Abiathar the priest. Abiathar was the guy that had been with David since that the massacre of the priest at Nob. David fled from Saul, went to Nob, met the priest there, then he fled again. Then eventually Saul went after those priests and had some guy kill them all, except for this guy, or his son maybe. This guy, that would have been this is that guy's son. So David and this priest have a long history, a long connected history. And for some reason, this priest has decided that Adonijah is going to be the guy. Right now, they, the party, the festival, are eating and drinking with him and saying, Long live King Adonijah. But me, your servant, and Zadok the priest, and Benaiah son of Jehoiada, and your servant Solomon he did not invite. Is this something my lord the king has done, without letting his servants know who should sit on the throne of my lord the king after him? Actually, I'm going to go ahead and start your video there.